Welcome back to a new video. Another fun one. Thank you if you watched the last one on remote access and management. This one we'll be doing some load balancing and NIC teaming. I mentioned it's not going to be very long. It's just going to cover a few topics, just configuring network load balancing, which I've done in a prior series. And we're also going to be configuring some NIC teaming on a server as well. So to ensure that resources are highly available on the network, additional configurations can be done to ensure high availability and disaster recovery in the event of a device outage or failure. And this concept can actually be taken over to the cloud as well. I'll actually be doing a future video on particularly an Amazon Web Service network load balancing. But this is the network, the typical network series. So we're going to keep it here as far as network load balancing is concerned. But let's swivel over to DC01 because we can't do that. What we're going to do in Kali, of course. So just going to open up PowerShell here. Admin, of course. I'm going to type in a command to install a Windows feature. Right. There we go. So that command has been successfully executed. And so what it does is the IIS server role is to be installed on this device, and it can be used to host a company's internal or external website. So I just wanted to point that out. So let's take a look at our, let's see, does it not show me what I need here? There it is. I overlooked it. Let's take a look at our network. Right. Take a look at our proxy. Right. All right, and we're going to add an exception. Let's see. Stay this way. All right, and we're going to do save here. Hopefully it's saved. Now, a proxy exception, I did this because it has to be added to ensure that the recently created web server's website will be accessible in the lab environment that we're in. So I'm actually going to close this out and close the PowerShell out as well. And we're going to take a look at something in Microsoft Edge. So let's do that there. And as we can see here, now if the web server was installed on here, it needs to be verified if the web server is functioning correctly, and it is functioning correctly after we see it populate for us, and we can click on the links inside and everything. Now, let's move over to DM01. Let's actually crack open that PowerShell. Let's see. We're going to utilize the same command. Food management tool, of course. And pretty much we're just following the same rules that we did for the last server as far as installing the IIS and then taking a look at our settings for our network and internet. And now that it has been successful, we're going to take a look at our settings again. Take a look at our network and internet, of course. Take a look at our proxy. And we're going to add here our proxy. All right, perfect. So now I can close the settings and actually close that out. And again, do a double check through Microsoft and sure. Okay, I wasn't trying to do all of this. No, so that was working well as usual, as it should, right? So now we can install the network load balancing feature. Now, before the balancing cluster can be configured, the feature obviously has to be installed on the device, which would then be added to the cluster. All right, so let's swivel back over to DC and let's crack open PowerShell. All right. Now for PowerShell, pretty much the same, well, similar to what we used before. So we wanted to understand to install the Windows feature instead of the web server, as far as the main centerpiece here. Want to do network load balancing, right? And we still wanted to include the management tools, but now we also wanted to include all sub features. Perfect. All right, so it has been executed, and by executed, this specified command, the network load balancing feature is installed on the device, and the server manager can be used to install the feature using the GUI or the graphical user interface. Right, so I'm going to swivel over to a DMO1 and pretty much do the same thing. The work load balancing. Now this one is completed, so we can actually close this out. And after the network load balancer feature has been installed on both servers, a cluster needs to be configured, and the devices must be added. So I'm just going to swivel back over to DCO1, and then let's take a look here at the manager. Actually, maximize that. So we want to do a new one, of course. Don't have one. DCO1. And we want to hit connect here, right? And we want the first Ethernet, right? And then host parameter is next. Want to do cluster IPs. And for this one, we're going to do subnet is fine. All right, perfect. So now we can do next, right? And then for our cluster parameters, we're going to do multicast. And for our full internet name, we can do cluster here. All right, and then we can actually do finish. All right, and we have our first cluster. Now we can actually go back here, and then we're going to add a host to the cluster. So let me do that. Okay. Okay, so we can add a host to cluster. And of course, we want the other guy. DM1, connect. All right, we want it to be Ethernet naturally, right? And then Nah, this is fine. I'll click this here, finish. So now we have one cluster, we have two servers under that one cluster. Now I'm going to configure a forward lookup zone for the network balancing cluster that we have here to ensure that it will be contactable by devices on the network. I have to do this. So I'm actually going to head to the server manager, right? If it opens up for me. All right, and then we're going to take a look at our DNS. Actually, want to expand that. Let's take a look here. All right. I'm going to do a new host. All right. Now, again, as for lookup zone, a DNS is created to ensure resources on the network can be accessed using a network name instead of an IP address. So I'm just going to use what we've already used. Cluster, it's just not a capital C versus the original. When I first started using that name. All right, so we can add host and successfully create it. Now the IP address that was used when creating the new cluster is used to create the for lookup zone to point to the correct resource, by the way. All right. So now we're done with that. So I can actually close this manager here. All right. So now I can verify the created network load balancing cluster that we have. So for example, like an internal website, it's going to be balanced between the different nodes in the cluster. So I'm actually, to do this, I'm going to swivel over to Win10 and I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge here. Head to the site. You don't need to wait for that. Oh, I don't want it. Okay. So the website that was created is accessible through the network load balancing cluster that was created. So far, so good. So let's move it back over here, right? And let's shut down. It lets me. Okay, I'm supposed to just shut down, but I'll log in and do that. Okay, perfect. Now, while that's doing that, let's swivel back over here. I'm actually going to refresh this page. I'll just close it and open it back up. I don't like the way it's refreshing. Okay. Now, after shutting down the DMO1 device, it looks like the internal website is still available, which I was checking, indicating that the network load balancing works because the resource is still available. So let me close this out. So now I'm just going to configure some NIC teaming on the server. Now, servers on the network need to be um, highly available for requests from client devices, right? So to ensure these servers can manage the network traffic, additional network interface cards can be added to these servers. And these additional network interface cards can then be teamed together to increase the capacity for network traffic. So first, what I'm going to do is configure a secondary network interface card. Um, After it's been added, it needs to be configured with the correct IP configuration to ensure communication on the network, right? So going to connect the DMO1 so we can go ahead and get started. So now that we have DMO1 up and running, let's go ahead and take a look at our network settings, right? We're going to change our adapter settings as well. And then we're going to take a look at the properties for Ethernet 2. right? And we're going to take a look at our properties for the IPv4, right? And we're going to do a few things with version 4. So we're going to input the IP. Correct. Subnets will automatically be there. Default, let's do this guy here. And our preferred is going to be something like this. Right. We're going to hit OK. Yes, we want to save this configuration, of course. So now we can actually close this out. All right, perfect. So now we can configure some NIC teaming, right, to enable a server to share the network communication across multiple network interfaces. The devices have to be teamed together, right? So let's open back up the server manager. Take a look at all of our servers that we have, which is currently just DMO1, right? And I'm just going to right click here. We're going to configure the NIC here. And let's see. There. All right, so we're going to select Ethernet 2 and 3, and then we're going to have our team name. Okay, then we're going to hit OK here. And I'm actually going to close this out. All right. Now, the network interface cards, they were successfully teamed together, right? Now, let me refresh this as well. Now, in a production environment, it will depend on which adapters that will be used for the NIC team. And in a lab environment, the first NIC is used for a remote connection will cause the device to lose, or typically causes the device to lose connectivity. Hence, it cannot necessarily be used for NIC teaming technically, right? So just going to head back over to our settings here, right? And still change the adapter settings. And we see our NIC team here. And we're going to take a look at our properties for that one. And then we're going to take a look at our IPv4 properties. All right, and we're pretty much going to do similar this here. 9 automatic. Okay. Then our preferred. Then yes, of course we do. Now I can close this up. Then we can actually double click up here. All right, so what we're doing is we're just, take a look at the status window to verify the media state is enabled, that there is an IPv4 internet connectivity, establishing that the NIC teaming was completed successfully, right? Take a look at details, close that out. I'm actually going to swivel over to DCO1, and I'm actually going to open up PowerShell again, right? So we can actually ping here what we just created. Right now, the two network interface cards on the DMO1 device, they have been teamed together and are accessible using this IP address, as we can see here. And we can also see that it brings us to the end of the video. So overall, we did some load balancing and NIC teaming. And we did overall two things. We configured some network load balancing, and we also configured some NIC teaming on the server. This was most certainly a lot of fun. And we're going to have even more fun on the next one, where we're looking at some NTP server management. So it'd be so awesome. Cannot wait. I'll see you there. You stay curious, stay secure.